episode of LA Fishguys, we've got this time what's called a Fowler tank. That's fish only with live rock. FOWLR. This system has live rock inside the tank and uses a wet-dry trickle filter down below. Here, come take a look. So you can see here, it's the decorative coral decorations placed on top of a foundation of live rock in the tank. Now, live rock has the advantage of almost a built-in biological filter or built-in ecosystem, which can be very beneficial to many fishes and the environment in the tank, but it also kind of stands in the way of a few things, but I'll discuss that in just a little bit. So there we have the coral decorations placed on top of a live rock foundation. That's regular crushed coral gravel, but I'm sure that a lot of the life that has come off that live rock has now inhabited that gravel, and to a minor degree it's become a living filter or a biologically active system in itself. This system uses a wet-dry trickle filter. Yes, it still has the bioballs in there. This is not intended to be a reef tank, and I'm using a submersible water pump to send the water back up into the tank. One of the things that this tank does no longer have on it is a protein skimmer. It's this unit here in the back. It became an issue where I was very uncomfortable with the water pump that was driving it, and I feared that if the hose came disconnected, which it really wasn't clamped on there as well as I'd like, that it could come off. And one time it did, and it discharged a lot of the water out of the filter. So since that time, we've discontinued the use of the protein skimmer. Since we're not striving for a coral reef aquarium, and water quality always is an issue, but in this particular case, fish-only system, not that great an issue. I just never pushed the fact of replacing the protein skimmer. Some point down the road, we might consider adding something like an anemone or more fish, but I've already got a fish compatibility issue upstairs, or in the tank, where I've tried before to add fish, but have been unsuccessful because of. And the tank's doing quite well as it is, so with this struggling economy, I think it was just best not to push that issue. But this type of a system has bioballs over here for additional biological filtration, as well as I've mentioned before, the splishing and splashing as the water passes down through the bioballs increases the oxygen content of the water. The water then moves over to this side here where it's picked up by that submersible water pump and sent back up into the tank. The tank's 30 inches left to right, 36 inches tall, and 18 inches front to back. It has an internal overflow in it, which is what brings that water down into the wet-dry trickle filter. This tank houses a huma triggerfish, a lattice butterfly fish, there's a lemon peel pygmy or dwarf angel in there, a pair of clownfish, and there's also some royal grommas.
There's also one star for attention cockatiel.
They all benefit, I'm sure, in some way from the live rock. It was really my exploration of that kind of a system. Was live rock beneficial in a fish-only tank? And I would say yes, it is, but at the same time, there are a few limitations. The cabinetry was custom made for the application. Obviously, it holds the filter system down below in the tank. We've got storage space over on this side for pool and jacuzzi items, and more storage space over here, as well as there's a freezer or a bachelor apartment refrigerator freezer in this cabinet down here that holds the frozen fish food. The top of the tank is accessed through these doors here and just uses a simple fluorescent light hood with two bulbs on the inside of it. One of them we would call a 50-50. The other one, if I recall right, is like a 10,000 K bulb. Illumination in this tank is simply for us to see the fish. We're not trying to grow anything inside the tank, although there are some interesting things that have come about as a result of the live rock.
And we'll talk about those interesting things in a moment.
So I wanted to show you some of the interesting things that have come about as a result of the live rock. And I'll try to focus in here. If you can see that yellow stuff that's on that rock, that's living sponge. It has a couple of times spread itself out over the tank, crawling up the back and such. Additionally, there's these little golf ball sponges. I think just about everybody ends up with those. I do not ever recall seeing any bristle worms or anything like that. There are little dabs of, I think referred to as chicken liver sponge, that show up here and there. So over time, there's been a succession of different growths of sponges in the tank. And I'm sure if I was to uproot some of that rock, I might find some other interesting things. But other than the invisible biological benefits from there, I've never seen anything significant come from putting live rock in this tank. Now, as live rock goes, being living, it's going to produce waste and things such as that. And up here, you can't see it, but that's our internal overflow there. Because of the height of the tank, 36 inches, I do not perform mechanical filtration or pre-filtration in the overflow. It actually occurs right down here on the top of the wet-dry trickle filter. And much to my frustration, the amount of debris that's generated overwhelms the filter pad fairly quickly, and you can see it, in my opinion, is not doing a very good job at distributing the water over the bioballs, because most of those little holes are plugged up with debris generated by the live rock. You can see over the course of time there's been some debris that's collected down here. Interesting enough, those are actually Aptasia anemones down inside there. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of a peek inside the open sump end. We've got a few bags of carbon, and you can see there's a little bit of schmutz down inside there. Again, that's the same debris that managed to get past the filter pad. And at the same time, it being a living system is going to produce its own bits of interesting things. So again, I've never seen any real significant benefit to adding the live rock to the tank. I'm going to go so far as to say this, though. Chances are very good that at some point in time, this being a fish-only system, you're going to end up having to deal with parasites, ick in particular. And the most common way to deal with parasites is a copper-based medication, which by introducing copper into this system with that live rock, you're going to kill off a lot of the life that came in the live rock. So once again, I just don't see the benefit of adding the live rock to this type of a tank. Or let me rephrase it, I do see the benefit, but I also recognize some of the potential issues or roadblockers or dead ends that stop me from doing something that I need to do. And as far as ick's concerned, you can claim you've got the healthiest fish in town, but ick is on every fish, and in the right situation, under the right circumstances, with the right stress factor, those fish are probably going to show that ick in some way or another. And you will at some point have to deal with a medication issue. This tank was put in, I'm going to say, the late 90s, early 2000, and I'm pretty sure that in that period of time I've had to introduce medication into the tank to deal with some type of a parasite issue, which probably explains why it's really only sponge that I see growing inside the tank. Although you might be pleasantly surprised that if we were to increase the lighting on there, there could come out of that live rock all kinds of plant growth. I remember many years back in the early 90s, a customer services wife gave her husband a big metal halide enclosure for his 125-gallon fish only or Fowler tank at the time. And it was amazing that that tank, which ran for 2 or 3 years with that rock in the tank, once we put that metal halide on, within 6 months developed this forest of halimeda, which is a calcareous algae that grows in little discs on top of each other. And it grew so plentiful that we had to harvest it out of the tank at many times. So There's a lot of surprises that can come as a result of live rock in the tank. Certainly a lot of benefits. There's the biological aspect. It probably introduced some kind of a food source for some of the butterflies, of which this lattice butterfly is doing really well. But again, it does present an issue if you have to introduce medication into the tank. And in that being the case, I myself would have probably gone with the regular terrestrial or dead rock, decorative rock, as opposed to the live rock at that time. But those are all things that you learn as you go along. So we need to service the tank, get it cleaned. We're going to do vacuum the gravel, do a water change. We'll address this trickle filter and the filter pad on top of it. And we'll put a new clean set of decorations in the tank. So let's get to work.
Join us again for part 2, as in the process of doing the water change and vacuuming the gravel, we end up with a problem with the water pump.